So at this time, we have the chairman of the task force, Dr. England, here with us, who will go ahead on and get this meeting kicked off. So at this time, Dr. England.
Yes. What I thought I would do is just stick to this agenda I got last night, but it was primarily concerned with our discussion, Daryl and I, with a number of religious leaders concerning reopening the churches and when to do so. And I started the telephone conference by giving something I don't know that many people have been exposed to here, a epidemiologic assessment or prediction of where we will be over the next 1 and 2 and 3 years with this. I think a lot of people are still thinking that it's going to dry up and go away, or maybe we'll have one swing up in the fall. But the one I concentrated on was one issued by the epidemiologic section at the University of Minnesota Medical Center, Dr. Osterhelm and his group. And I'll say the others that I've seen are not differing a whole lot from this. And I was just doing this to give the religious leaders a sense of what they may have to be doing down the pike. The 3 scenarios are predicted here, and there's no good way to pick out which will be dominant. One is the surge that we've just gone through, and we're somewhat on the downside now, at least in Adams County. I think Mississippi itself, if you look, the cases are still rising. But right here, they've dropped since our surge about a month ago. But the prediction in scenario 1 is for a slow burn of cases from here, little small waves, never an absence of cases over the next 2 to 3 years, constant activity until a level of infection in the area has increased from its current, say, 5% or whatever, somewhere in there, up to about 65%. And at that point, you can calculate that the 65% have some level of immunity, and that the other 35% will have some immunity by the fact that most of the people that they'll come in contact can't get the disease. So, and that happens at about 65%, anywhere from 55 to 70% infection rates. The second scenario was a series of waves similar to what we've just gone through. As you come down, then people tend to get out, and they get out more in groups, and more exposures occur. The virus is always there. And then because of those exposures, you can go through another wave. People tighten up, they go indoors, they don't go to businesses. Then that wave effervesces in the same fashion. It's repetitive over the course of 2 or 3 years until you have the 65% infection rate in the community. The third scenario was a repeat of the 1918 epidemic, in which came through in 3 waves. The first in the spring of 1918, the second a tsunami type of wave in October and November of 1918 that lasted through the winter, and is where you got the tens of millions of lives lost. And then a third wave, which was much more minor. And in that kind of scenario, once the tsunami type wave occurs, you don't have that much activity, but it's all getting toward the 65%. And I wanted these people to understand that, and that there might be necessity down the pike to lock up again. So my suggestion to them, and Daryl's too, was, now that we've reopened the restaurants, to give it about 4 weeks and see if there's a spike in the cases. And I can be in discussion with the health department, and I can watch the admissions here at the hospital, and we'd be in a better position to give them advice over what to do. If there was going to be a spike because of the relaxing of distancing, then it would be better for them to wait until that spike was over. If there's no spike and it just stays at this ongoing slow burn of activity, then I would think they could go ahead and give it a whirl with all the precautions that are recommended. So I don't know what the result of it was. I think St. Mary is going to go ahead and open in 2 weeks. I think Presbyterian, I heard, is going to wait till the 21st. I imagine a lot of them are going to wait till the 21st. I don't know that any of them want to be a super spreader or things that go national on the news because it erupted at this particular church. So they're way concerned with safety, and that was evident during the conference. And that's all I had about that. Were there any questions?
Hi, Dr. England. This is Mark Doyle. I've got a quick question for you. When you think out and play out those scenarios that you were just discussing, those 3 scenarios, how might any of them be affected if indeed some kind of useful vaccine were to come along, say a year and a half from now?
It would be a complete game changer, because at that point you can go ahead and get up to the 65% immunity in whatever time it took to get the vaccine distributed. Another game changer would be an effective drug. That would where if somebody came into the hospital, they could get effective treatment. We wouldn't be having these ventilator cases. I just had one that arrested a few minutes before this call. It would be a complete game changer. Now, the vaccine, you have to understand some of the past records about vaccine. There's a sister virus to this virus, the SARS-1 virus, and during which there was an epidemic in about 18 years ago. It was generally confined to China, and we've never been able to have a vaccine to that virus. The HIV virus surfaced 40 years ago, and all the money that's been poured into the development of that virus, we've never been able to get a reliable virus. I just saw in the New England Journal the most recent project was canceled for lack of efficacy. The influenza virus, the vaccine for it is about 60-65% effective, and a lot of people don't get it. So we might have that kind of situation. We get partial immunity. And the other thing is that the world record for speed in developing a vaccine is for the mumps virus, and that took 4 years. So it's more likely that we'll run the whole 2 or 3 years to get to 65% just on our own. I would think it would be more likely to get a treatment drug in place than it would a vaccine. Vaccines are complicated things to do, and I know they say a year and a half, but that's the best case scenario, and it might work. As many people as are working on it, it could be, but you just have to plot this out as if it's not going to be there.
What are your what's your current thinking about the likelihood of a treatment drug?
I would think that's well more likely. We've developed drugs for viruses, for the herpes viruses, for the HIV virus, for the hepatitis C virus, and it's possible we could get one. They've had an emergency release on remdesivir, and we are using that here at this hospital, but it's really not a game changer. The original endpoints for the study were mortality rates, how many people were on the ventilator at a certain date after getting the drug, how many were on BiPAP, how many were on various forms of oxygen, and the drug didn't meet any of those endpoints. And stated another way, it wasn't any better than not using the drug. So they changed the endpoint and said how long in the hospital. And as it turned out, those that didn't get the drug were 15 days in the hospital, and those that did were 11 days in the hospital. So it was released on that and on that basis. and it's something like you would see with the Tamiflu. In other words, you get a few days free of the influenza by taking Tamiflu, and that's basically it. Now, if you're really miserable with it, it's worth it. But it doesn't drop the death rate. They just as many people on the ventilators. So that's not a game changer, but we might get one. It'd be more likely to get an effective drug than it would be a vaccine.
Thanks very much.
Okay.
Okay, Dr. England, you're going to continue with the agenda.
Say again, please.
You're going to continue with the agenda.
Yes, let me haul it out here. I didn't have time with that arrest to do that.
Yeah.
Let's see. If you got it in front of you, just go ahead and call the next person, and I'll catch up here.
All right. Do we have Lance Boyd on the call or Shannon Russ with Merit Health? Okay. If not, Dr. Blaine Meir with a physician's update. Okay, Dr. Meir isn't on the call. Next, we'll have an update of the MISLU data, William Thames and Norma Williams. Good morning.
Hi, good morning. So I sent out, and I think Chesney sent to everyone some graphs, which visually are, I think certainly for me, and I think most people, more helpful than a table of numbers, because these in particular show what's happening over time. And you can see from the tables or the graphs rather, that came out in 2 different emails, and I hope everyone got them, what's happening across the state of Mississippi and then what's happening locally here in Adams County. And the bottom line is that particularly the number of new cases and then even the rolling daily average of new cases is continuing to increase to an all-time high last week for the state of Mississippi. However, the rolling average for the last 7 days, looking at it over a 2-week period of time, has diminished here in Adams County. And I think it is reasonable for us to believe that it's a consequence or a result of the efforts of our committee. But Adams County has been significantly improved in the number of new cases as well as in the number of deaths. We haven't had a death, thank God, in quite a little while here. And so that's the summary of my report.
Okay, thank you, William. Norma,
I want to thank Norma
add?
and Bill. Norma and Bill have done a wonderful job in continuing to enhance this data they're compiling for us, and especially with that rolling 7-day average. That's really helpful. So thank you, Norma.
We're glad to help in any way that you need us to. And the charts that we sent you, you can actually change that rolling 7-day average to go anywhere from a rolling 2 to a rolling 21-day average. And if y'all want me to address that, I'll be glad to.
Say again who's speaking, please.
That's Norma Williams. Go ahead, Norma.
Okay. What my husband Bill Williams has done is he wrote a program that we can send to anybody that has Windows 10 so that you can actually extract this data from what's called usafacts.org. They get their data from CDC as well as the various state health department. They're reporting on a county level by date. And thank you, William, for pulling that up. And so they're reporting on a county level by date for all 50 states. And what we're doing is we basically can graph that. And that can come in each day if you need it. And we can, like I said, either send you the link so you can update it if you can't sleep at 2 o'clock in the morning and you're looking for something to do, or, currently we're sending you updates every Sunday evening, which will reflect data through Saturday, and every Tuesday evening, which reflects data through Monday. But if you want us to send you that information more frequently, because you'll be monitoring it over the next month plus probably, we'll be glad to, because Bill has automated it to where it's about a 30-minute process, which is much easier than the 2-hour process. But we're glad to help in any way that we can, because we're retired and staying home as our doctor recommends. And we're just glad to help you guys in any way possible. And we thank y'all for giving us the opportunity to help you guys in any way possible. Do y'all have any questions about this graph, or do you want me to show it to you or anything?
Are there any questions from anyone on the call for Norma? And let me say that Norma and Bill Williams have been truly assets to our community by pulling this data, supplying us with the data for our area so that we can know what our numbers are and plugging them into graphs. We really, really appreciate Norma, you and Bill for what you guys have done. And William has done an outstanding job of presenting that information, not only to the task force, but to the coalition of the mayors of the Miss Lou and to other individuals throughout this community. Thank you so much. Are there any questions?
This is Dr. England. I had one question. The data is from the Mississippi State Department of Health and the CDC?
Yes, it's actually coming from a website called usafacts.org, and they are getting their information from CDC as well as various health departments, the 50 states probably. There's actually a link to it on the CDC website, because unfortunately the CDC website does not report county data in the level by date, okay? So that's why we're hitting on this usafacts.org, because they do it by date, by county.
Okay.
So, but we are able to reconcile usually to CDC data, and we're able to reconcile both to the Mississippi Department of Health data as well as the Louisiana Department of Health data. There's usually a 1-day lag on reconciling to the Mississippi Department of Health data. For example, data that we've provided through May 23rd from the usafacts.org will reconcile to the Mississippi Health Department data reported on their website as of May 22nd, 6 p.m.
Okay. Thank you, Norma.
You're welcome.
Okay. Next, we will have emergency management update. Robert Bradford, he's going to give us an update on governor's orders, local curfew, and State Department of Health testing and contact tracing. Good morning, Brad.
So, good morning, Mayor. This is, okay, he's on now. Okay.
Go ahead, Brad.
Yeah, we have to take this, so I'm talking through another phone. So, good morning, everybody. What we got today, we know the governor's orders, our local orders extend, goes out on the end of this month. What we're anticipating, I got another call with the legal director department today. We'll see what the governor is going to do. If he may,
Go ahead, Brad.
Go ahead, Brad.
We must have lost him, Mayor.
Okay.
Okay.
This is
Nifa.
This is the reason.
Hey, Nifa.
Yes.
Go ahead.
Hi. So that's why I was gonna brief for Brad, because he did text me and said he kept getting kicked off, and he wanted me to just say that that we were planning on staying with the governor's assessment at the safer at home order and continue with the county curfew. And that was a text that he had sent to me because he wasn't on the call. So he might be trying to call back in now, and if so, he can expand on those on those text messages that he had sent to me earlier.
Excuse me, Brad is talking on my speakerphone because he couldn't get on, and then he accidentally got muted. But Brad, you're back if you want to.
Okay, go ahead, Brad. Okay.
Okay, sorry for the confusion, everybody. Yeah, like Anita was saying, with the governor's order, he's going to probably go ahead and extend the safer at home order due to the rise of the couple counties that we have and are becoming hotspots. As far as the restrictions and stuff like that, I don't see if he's going to probably not do anything with the current order, but as far as leave it up to the municipalities and the counties, if they want to, impose stricter guidance due to their numbers in COVID exposure rates and stuff like that, what we have. Currently in the county, we're looking good. The rate is kind of flattening, due to the new assessment, the new numbers coming out. We still do have people that's contracting COVID-19. This is no time for us to be complacent. We still have to practice mitigation practices. That's what the EOC is doing now. We're in the mitigation phase for putting out literature, letting everybody know that, hey, continue social distancing, continue to wash your hands as a lot of business reopen. So we're going to be monitoring that. Like Dr. England said, it's going to take a while for us to set that to see where we at. So in the event we have to go back to a response phase, we can transition back on that. In line of the curfew, we're going to probably, I know we talked about it last time at a meeting, as far as anyone under the age of 21 has to be in by 11. And that's going to be a law enforcement question pertaining to the curfew, if it's working or if it's not. That's going to be up to the law enforcement to, if it's not working, recommend that, hey, we just do away with the curfew. So I'll pause for them to comment on that.
Brad,
Okay.
There was so much confusion. I wonder did you mention testing and contact tracing and where we are with that? I was distracted.
No, he hasn't. I was getting ready to bring that up.
Sorry. Okay, thanks.
Go ahead, Brad, on testing and contact tracing.
Yeah, Nifa gonna brief that part of it.
Okay, Nifa, if you don't mind, will you go ahead? And Brad, what we'll do, we have a law enforcement section on the agenda, so we'll let the chief and the sheriff talk about the curfew when it comes to their time on the agenda. Go ahead, Nifa.
Okay, so as far as the contact tracing on our part, that's actually being done through the Mississippi State Department of Health. And Madeline England, she's the head of that as it relates to contact tracing, not just for our area, but for other areas as it relates to other counties within the Southwest region. So she would have to be able to address that as it relates to the Department of Health on what they're doing with contact tracing. However, what we're doing moving forward with EOC is we're working with the local public housing areas and other areas within the community to be able to give out flyers or informationals to those individuals to be able to discuss social distancing, hand washing, and being able to, stay 6 feet apart, and being able to how to be able to explain things to to children and to others in the community within your area. So we're working on that, and those flyers should hopefully be going out by the end of this week.
Okay. Brad, anything else you need to update or report to the task force?
Yeah, like if everybody hear me, like Lisa was saying, the State Department is doing the contact tracing here. They have a handle on it because our numbers are so low than other counties. We're also in the EOC, we're tracking our positive cases by location, also doing schematics. see if there's any potential of this location is spreading it and stuff like that, so we can try to put in mitigation practices on that. The only bad part about that, everyone knows with the state of Mississippi is everybody is, once they become positive, trying to make them stay at home and quarantine is going to be a real challenge. So, we just have to get the word out to everybody to test positive, to really stay at home and let everybody know that they're positive. So if they had any contact with them, they can stay at home. Also, if they had kids, because kids can transmit this too. So we just have to do a better job with the mitigation part of it and identifying where the potential outbreaks are in our community to help Brad and keep it flat.
Okay, thank you, Brad. At this time, we're going to go to law enforcement, police department, Chief Walter Armstrong.
Good morning, everybody. The Natchez Police Department recorded a total of 67 calls to service over the weekend. From Friday, we went on and included Monday for a total of 67, which is up from previous weeks. We have been tracking our call volume over the last several weeks, and we started off with a very low call volume for an entire weekend of anywhere from 12 to 24 calls. And we noticed the weekend to follow that, our call volume started to inch up a little bit in the 20s to include 67 over this past weekend. However, we did include Monday. So we know that people are starting to get back out. We've been tracking that very closely. The worst thing we had to happen over the weekend, we did have a fatal crash at the east end of the Mississippi River Bridge where a couple and a child turned in the path of an oncoming vehicle and caused the passenger to be killed. As it relates to curfew violation, as it relates to at least one business that flat out defied the order from the governor's office as well as the city of Natchez by staying open past the 10 o'clock hour. This was a bar. And not only did this business stay open past the 10 o'clock hour, it was open after 3 a.m. However, they did reference that they had gotten some special privileges in order to do that. The officers did not take any further action, wanted to wait until we can verify whether or not that business has been given special privileges to be defiant. Other than that, we had a quiet weekend as far as not a lot of people was out past the curfew hour. The curfew, I think, need to stay in place. However, it needs to be enforced. And that is something that we certainly have had discussions about from a law enforcement perspective, even as late as last Thursday during a staff meeting. So everything seemed to be working. I think we need to keep the curfew in place in order that we can have some leverage in order to deal with those individuals who may be in violation. Other than that, that concludes my report. I will be getting with someone to find out whether or not the Andrew Tabin has been given special privilege to stay open past the 10 p.m. hour.
Thank you, Chief. Robert Purnell, will you put your phone on mute? Robert Purnell, please put your phone on mute. All right, thank you, Chief Armstrong. Next, we'll go to
Mr.
Adams
Mayor.
County.
Mr.
Yes.
Mayor,
Yes, Ms.
I didn't
Mathis.
want to pass. I didn't want to let this pass. I've got 3 emails. I do not know the bar, but one chief is Mitch Lawrence. Could you tell me what bar that is? And then the other is Scotty Simpson. And then I did get Andrews. So I need some help with that. They're trying to get clarification and they're questioning what's being done differently, why are they being treated in a different manner than the casino. I can send you copies of the email, but I've gotten them. I don't know if anybody else has. And they are questioning, like I said, they're questioning why they're being treated differently from the casinos, that you can drink at the casino, and I know you can eat at the casino up until 10. So that's their question. I'm just passing it on. I will also pass it on in a board meeting, but I just wanted to make sure, since we were in this arena, that I pass it on here. Thank you.
Thank you. Robert Purnell, please put your phone on mute. Please place your phone on mute. We're getting background information from you. Okay.
All right, sorry
Sheriff,
about
Adams County Sheriff's Office, Sheriff Travis Patton.
Good morning, everybody. Our call volume was extremely low this weekend as well, with the exception of somebody breaking into Cable One, who did apprehend this morning, Cable One storage facilities. As far as the jail go, we don't have any COVID cases as far as inmates go, or as far as employees. The ones who had it, they've gotten past their quarantine time and they're back at work. Now, I did sit out on the bluff for a couple of hours this weekend, and I must commend the citizens of the city of Natchez County of Adams, because I was down there for about 3 hours sitting out on the bluff, and I may have seen 7 people. As I rode around throughout the day and night, people, I would say at least 3/4 of the people were doing what they needed to do. As far as the nightclubs and things go, they are adhering to the rules that have been set in place, and the few restaurants that we have in the county as well. So overall, I commend the efforts of everybody involved on both the COVID task force and the EEOC E911 task force as well, for getting the information out and doing what they can to educate the public, and as well as the medical staff and everybody else. But for the most part, people are going to have to want to do this for themselves, and we just have to keep pushing forward with the efforts that we're doing to make sure we keep it in front of their face. That's all I have for now. Thank you.
All right. Thank you, Sheriff. At this time, the Fire Department, Chief Ventress Green. Chief Green? Okay, maybe he's not on the call. We're moving on. Municipal elections, City Clerk Sevilla Fortenberry, and Election Commissioner Larry Gardner. Good morning.
Good morning, Mayor.
Morning.
Let me go first, Larry.
Yeah, I think I am.
Okay, so
Green
elections
is on.
going well. We had our first Saturday elections this past Saturday from 9 to 12. We had about 100 people to come in. We're open daily from 8 a.m. to 5 p.m. to vote in person. And we'll be open this Saturday.
Hold up, Sevilla. Chief Green, put your phone on mute. I'll come back to you. Place your phone on mute. All right, now, Sevilla, go ahead.
Yes, sir. So we'll be open this week from 8 a.m. to 5 p.m. taking in-person votes. And it will also be open this Saturday from 8 a.m. to noon. You can vote in person. We are taking absentee still through the mail, but I would encourage everybody to get them in today or tomorrow, because they have to be mailed back. You can't hand deliver them back. And so for me to mail them to you, you have a chance to go ahead and cast your vote and mail it back to my office. It has to be here by this Monday, which is June 1st by 5 p.m. Other than that, that's all I have right now, Mayor.
Okay, Mr. Gardner?
Yeah, can you hear me?
Yes, sir.
Can you hear me?
Yes, sir.
We had a meeting with all of the poll workers last Thursday at the convention center, and we went through all the guidelines that we want them to use to keep themselves safe as well as the voters. And we had a really good turnout. We went through step by step the procedures they'll follow from the entrance to the polling place all the way through the process of voting and exiting the polling place. So I think we're all set. The only thing we were not able to get was some plexiglass shields, but we're placing one table in front of another to give the poll workers, we're getting the poll workers more distance from the election commissioners. Does anyone have any questions?
Are there any questions?
Yes, I have one there.
Okay, go ahead, Ms. Irvin.
Okay, thank you. My question is, will children be allowed to come in the polls with their parents? And if not, can that be identified to the public?
Yeah, we're telling them not to bring children because legally the only ones allowed in a voting precinct or ward are the poll workers, the candidates, or poll watchers and voters. Children are not voters because they're too young, they aren't of age, so they really should not come into the polling place.
Okay. I understand that. However, some parents will bring them in for them to experience the voting process. So that was my reason for asking the question. And has the public been notified of that? Thank you.
I have no idea if the public has been notified of that, but they're still going to have to follow the rule. And we mentioned to it that some parents may not have anybody to watch the children, but the children still need to wear some kind of face covering before they come into the polling place.
Okay. Any other questions for Mr. Gardner?
Mayor Brielle, I have a question. This is Chesney Doyle.
Go ahead. Go ahead.
When we get to the tourism report, Larry, it may be that there's some information for you about plexiglass shields, because that's something that they've been studying and looking into.
Okay.
Well, we have as well. We've contacted everyone we could, and the problem is getting plexiglass. That's the biggest problem. There's been such a demand on plexiglass all over the country that they're having a hard time getting the supplies.
Okay.
This is Warren Ruther with This is Warren Ruther. We have 82 buses, and it's not a problem of getting the plexiglass in New Orleans. It's acrylic. And there's a company here that's installing. We've done 42 buses already, and it's not difficult to get it. So if anybody is interested and would like to speak to the people that we're using, I'll be more than happy to give that to them. But I just sent.
Well, this is Eugenie.
Hold up, Eugenie.
I'm sorry.
Go ahead, Warren. Finish up.
Yeah. So if anybody needs that information, I just sent Eugenie. I just sent Chesney. And I said, Jennifer, all the rules and regulations that our company is putting into effect with the drivers and the guides and the buses and what we're doing. So you all have that now, Mr. Mayor.
Okay, thank you, Warren. Go ahead, Eugenie Capes.
I'm sorry, Mr. Mayor. I wanted to let everyone know that there is a glass company in Ridgecrest, Louisiana called Delta Glass, and they have the acrylic, or they had it last week. So that's a local source. But Warren's source is good too.
I have one question.
Thank you so much.
This is
Go
Chesney.
ahead, Chesney.
Thank you, Mayor Grinnell. One more question, which is, Larry Gardner, the cards that we use, that are passed from person to person, how was that being handled, the sanitizing?
They're going to be sanitized every time they're used by the poll worker at the table. They will put it on the table. The voter will pick up the card, put it in the voting machine. When they're done voting, they bring the card back to the table and just set it on the table. Then the poll worker will re-sanitize that card again before they program, and then re-sanitize right after they program and put it on the table for the next voter.
And the screen, you mentioned that you'll be sanitizing.
The screens, they're not going to touch any of the screens. They're going to use a stylus, or in our case, a popsicle stick, and they're going to touch the candidate of their choice and use that instead of their fingers. But even though they're going to do that, we're going to be sanitizing periodically the machines throughout the day.
Okay, thank you so much.
You're welcome.
Someone else had a question? Okay.
I had that same question, Mayor, but it's been answered. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, we're going to move on. Thank you, Larry. Thank you, Sevilla. Chief Green, Fire Department.
Good morning, Mr. Mayor. Can you hear me?
Yes, sir. Go ahead, Chief.
Good morning to all. everything in the fire department is well. All of my employees are safe. No one is positive. We did notice an increase of building fires this week. Over the weekend, we had 4 building fires, and one of the great things about one of the fires was they had fire sprinklers in their building, and they was able to put that fire before we made it there. So that was a great thing because it's way out in the county. But we had 2 vehicle accidents. One was a fatality on the Natchez side of the bridge. And hearing the news from Dr. England this morning is, I want to commend, like the sheriff said, both task force, the EOC and the city task force, because if you look throughout the state, they are seeing an increase. And I'm a numbers guy, so it's got to be a reason that we have been seeing a decrease. So we just got to keep up the battle with this disease, and like you say, social distances, and be coherent of your surroundings. And as a community, the more we come together, the better we will be able to stay on top of this virus. And that concludes my report.
Thank you so much, Chief Green. All right, we're going to move on to the mayor's business sector reopening meetings. And I'm going to ask if Chesney Doyle will facilitate this portion of the agenda. I've been meeting with various groups over the past several weeks, along with Chesney and Dr. England, in terms of trying to reopen various facets of our community. So Chesney, if you would facilitate this section, please.
Thank you, Mayor Grinnell. So everyone, this is an attempt by the mayor to start working with different sectors of our business community to help define what is the new normal going to be. So, you know, working directly with the people who work in that industry, and what sort of guidelines and procedures need to be in place, and hearing from the communities, you know, what they think is going to work and what they can sustain. So let's start with the faith community. Mark Doyle and Bill Barksdale are our task force liaisons for the faith community, and we may have already covered this, but Mark and Bill.
Sure. This is Mark. I was going to give you a report and an update on the meeting that we had, the faith community meeting that we had last Thursday, which the mayor put together. It was I think it was well attended. There were a diverse group of people from all over the faith community, the local faith community attending. And Dr. England made his presentation, which I was going to share with you, but it is exactly as he reported at the beginning of this meeting. And his guidance at the end of that presentation was that the faith community wait until approximately June 21st to make a decision as to the start of of basic reopening. The reasoning for that, Dr. England also explained, and that is that we're not going to know until somewhere in that time what the actual impact locally is of our reopening efforts that have already started. So, you know, I could just say before introducing Bill here that the meeting was just what you might expect. I mean, you know, all of these people in the faith community are as frustrated by our current situation as everyone else in the community is. However, the guidance is clear, and I think that a lot of faith leaders were struggling during the meeting to come to grips with you know, their next steps. But I felt that in a general sense, there was general agreement that this was a time for particular care on the part of the faith community. And then, you know, before I ask Bill to join in, I'll just say that all of that work that happened on Thursday, and you know, fairly gut wrenching for all the people involved, as I know you can appreciate. Then on Friday, you know, the president says everybody should go back to church. I say that just to lead into Bill, because I think that there was certainly a general feeling at that point that the whole matter of worship services and so forth could become, you know, significantly more controversial. But having said that, Bill, I think maybe can give us some insight into what actually happened and what he sees going forward. So, Bill, thank you.
Thank you, Mark, and thank you, Mayor. This is Bill Barksdale over at Jefferson Street. I just want to point out a couple of things that are particular to our religious communities and faith networks. Number one, we do not have a enforcement mechanism like a business might or a doctor's office might, where we could just simply deny entrance to folks. I mean, we could, but we would also be denying a donor. We would also be denying someone who has always come to that church for years and years. So enforcement of any precautions is a concern for us. We do also, I think there's a good bit of feeling that the churches are being asked to do something a little bit long, to wait a little bit longer to see what the results of the business community reopening has been, and that did not go over very well. At the same time, we're all very, very concerned about providing a safe entrance, a safe place for worship for all of our folks, realizing that we have vulnerable and immunocompromised people who will want to come back to worship. After the president's declaration, I had 3 or 4 phone calls, 5 or 6 texts, and as a result of that, we decided to loop our broadcast in the sanctuary just all day long. Just we put it on a loop on a video screen from 8 a.m. to 7 p.m., and we had a total of 5 people that came. So there's a kind of a disconnect between people that kind of get their backs bowed up about being told what to do, and then when they are given the opportunity to come in, they don't. So we're just struggling along with everyone else. I think the less that we can be, the less that the task force can be directed and more encouraging to our faith leaders, that would be helpful. Also realizing that some of our denominational leaders have already made decisions for us. You know, the Catholic Diocese of Jackson has already indicated that they can open up on May 31st. Certainly Father Scott has a decision or some voice in that. But the Episcopal Church is the same way. They've decided that they're going to be able to open up, I believe, on May 31st as well. I can't quite remember, but of course, the Episcopal Diocese was one of the very first that said, y'all are shutting down. So faith leaders respond to our authorities, and we respond to our donors. And just another reminder that churches are also a business, and being 3 months without having the ability to collect offering in person is certainly putting a financial strain upon us. So that's just kind of where we are.
Okay, thank you, Mark and Bill, for that update. Go ahead, Chesney.
Okay, thank you. We had 2 tourism-related meetings this past week. And so Jennifer Ogden Combs, would you please just give us an overview on tourism, and then we'll hear from Sally Durkin, and then about tour operators, that meeting, and then the Historic House and Museums group.
Okay. Good morning, everyone. Good morning, Mayor and Board and Task Force. So you probably saw we had lots of visitors in town, license plates from all over. As things have begun to open up, we are continuing to get a lot of calls and questions about the kinds of things that the mayor had meetings with last week about when can we get it, when can we tour a house, when can we, when can we do certain things, when can we have tours. So the importance of all of this information that was discussed last week, and as any of the individual tour operators or historic homeowners or garden clubs, NPT, as those decisions are finalized and the protocols nailed down and put into place and a date that people will be able to do that, is just important to help us keep not only our local community aware of it and up to date on it, but making sure that the information, we get it as quickly as you can so that we're putting out accurate information. The interest in coming here is increasing every single day. We go through visitor guides every day at the visitor center. One of the big statistic I got this morning just now was, in the state of Mississippi, tourism visitor expenditures in the state of Mississippi was $6.7 billion in 2019. So far in just the last 10 weeks, the loss of visitor spend in the state is down by 1.9, almost 2 billion in 10 weeks. So, but more important is, in my view, and that is being kind of reflected back to us in some surveys we did of people who've actually come to Natchez, is the need for safety measures, safety protocols, policies, procedures, guidelines to be in place so that visitors start to feel more confident and more comfortable in coming. And I will say, I drove around a good bit over the holiday weekend, just kind of seeing who was here and where were the tags from and that sort of thing. There were people not wearing masks, and any kind of face coverings, and there were people that actually were from other states. A lot of people walking around outside the visitor center. That is, I will say that in the course of our calls last week, I think the opening of the visitor center is something that's going to be further out than when tours and things like that are happening. There's a lot of issues to consider in terms of opening, but there are still ways that the city tourism office and that Visit Natchez is responding in a very timely way to visitor calls, questions, inquiries. So that's continuing to happen constantly. I mean, actually did all weekend. I do want to bring up a question and an issue that we're going to need to, need to bring up a question and an issue that we probably need to discuss in the next week or so. We've been getting some requests by Sabrina Dore in Vidalia, who headed up the fireworks committee the last couple of times they've done fireworks. Information about, and I've seen it on Facebook as well, really looking for donors and looking to do the 4th of July fireworks. That's a that's a big crowds on the bluff. And I think, listening to Dr. England this morning in the June 21st, and I'd actually seen the models that he referenced today. We just, I think, have to really make that determination how both communities, both the Vidalia side, because it's a joint venture, but it's a Miss Lou joint venture. So, I'll look forward to having that conversation. It doesn't necessarily have to involve the entire group that's on this call, but we do want to begin to think about if that's something we can support going forward as a community and as joint community. So rather than me going into any of the details, I'm going to call on Sally first to talk about the conversation we had with tours. Sal?
Good morning, everybody. I'll just try to be brief and sort of touch on the bullet points of what we discussed in our tourism reopening and about the different configurations of the tour vehicles that we have in Natchez, from mine to the carriages, to the hop-on, hop-off buses. And of course, it'll be mandatory for the drivers, guides, and passengers to have on a mask. And me personally, I'm going to sanitize the hands of the passengers before they board the vehicle, just to make sure that if they do, when they touch the seat belts and so forth, that there's no transmission. There will be either a plexiglass or some type of commercial grade visqueen or a plastic shield put into place. There are actual taxi cab shields that are for sale on the internet that attach by Velcro. So I think that's the system that I'm going to go with. And then the vehicle will be sanitized at the end of each tour. And the sanitization process takes anywhere from 12 to 15 minutes to actually be effective. So I'm actually going to spread out my tours and change my tour departure times to accommodate for that. And then we also touched on the seating situation on the buses, both tour buses that come into town and the hop-on, hop-off bus. And Warren can expound on this if he wants, that the passengers would also be masked for that. And the seating would be alternated, especially like on the top of the bus, starting on one side, alternating every other row, and then the next group of people to board would then alternate on the opposite side, alternating every other seat. But that's pretty much it in a nutshell, as far as the tour operators are concerned, and if anybody, has anything to add to that.
Okay, continue on, Jennifer. Thank you, Sally.
Thanks. Mayor, before I turn it over to the Historic Houses and Museums group, I wanted to bring to everyone's attention something that was brought to my attention over the weekend, just for us to consider. As we saw a lot more people coming into the community and visitors coming into the community, our stay home signs that we have all over the city, and private homes and on city property and all of that, it was just brought to my attention and asked if there would be an opportunity to maybe soften that stay home.
We're working on that, Jennifer.
Okay, great. Thank you.
I'm going to speak on that. Go ahead, Chesney.
Yes, ma'am. Warren, yes. Is that Warren?
Oh, this is Alderman Fraser. I have a question for Sally.
Go ahead.
I'm here.
Sally, I was hearing
yes,
you.
Sir.
Were you just speaking for your tour business, and what are you speaking for also for the carriage operators too?
Right. Sally
yes.
was just reporting for all of the tour operators. Had a call with all of them on last week. Go ahead, Sally.
Yeah, that's all I was going to say to Mr. Fraser, is that we had a pretty extensive discussion to all of these elements last week. And I also want to say that the governor's office is considering these same guidelines. And so of course, we're going to follow whatever the governor's office ultimately hands down, but it's pretty much the same elements that I just reported.
Okay, thank you, ma'am.
And this is Chesney, Alderman Fraser. That was the first meeting of the tour operator group. There is a gentleman out of, I believe, Franklin County, Rev, who was not part of that meeting, but he will be part of the next one. Also, it was mentioned that the taxi service should be involved. I think Rock and Roll Taxi is the only one that we have, but they do carry tourists around. So in our next meeting, we'll work harder to get those two individuals engaged. And then we'll be trying to come up with some minimum safety standards that the group agrees are, best practices and sustainable for the near future.
Okay, museums. Chesney?
Okay, yes. So we had a second meeting with representatives of our historic house and museum industry. And so first up, Kathleen Bond is going to give us a report on the National Park Services position.
Good morning, everybody. Well, all of us are struggling through this, and we're trying to see through a glass darkly, and it is confusing. And I think those of us who work in tourism more than anyone else possibly have to look at those state statistics and even beyond more than we look at our county statistics, because most of the people who come to our properties are coming from somewhere else. If it's a drive market, they may be coming from within Mississippi and Louisiana. And so we all have to be cognizant that those are people who are coming from areas with higher concentrations than we have here in our county, and take plans and take precautions accordingly. As I've said almost every week, because we are part of the Department of Interior, we have to work with federal guidelines, which are still incomplete at this point. And so we are making our plans to reopen the grounds at Melrose, and I hope that by this time next week, I can put a date on that.
Thank you, Kathleen. Any questions for Kathleen, anybody?
Let's proceed.
Eugenie for Natchez Pilgrimage Tours, Eugenie Cates.
Good morning, Mayor. Good morning, everyone. I would say that the tour homes, we are ready. We did have that meeting last week. We went through the protocol, the sanitations. I can highlight a few of those if you would like for me to, for those that weren't on that call. I say that the houses are ready. The thing that makes this different than, say, a hurricane is that when we closed, all we did was turn out the lights. So when we reopen, we'll turn the lights on again, and we will be ready with our protocol that we will use. The tours will be limited to about 6 people total capacity. The employees, of course, will be screened according to the CDC and OSHA guidelines. And the docents, the tour guides, will wear their masks and gloves. There will be signage requiring the visitors to wear their masks. And we will have, of course, the sanitation stations. And I've been recommending that the homes order the touchless sanitation station so that there is absolutely no touching and transferring of anything. And they'll be at the entrances and at the stairwells and at the restrooms and at the exits. And of course, our cleaning will be every 30 minutes and overnight. I've spoken to the cleaning services that work for Longwood and Stanton Hall, and Donna Sessions has worked with her cleaning crews. And of course, there'll be special cleaning done overnight in the evenings. The plexiglass that I mentioned, we found ours in Ridgecrest, Louisiana. Delta Glass has been making them, and I believe all the houses are have ordered them, and they will be installed this week or the first of next week. And we talked about the cashless systems where we will not require many transactions, no cash. If we can help it, we'll be asking for credit cards, and most people are ordering their tickets online. And so when they get to our establishment, they just show their telephone, their cell phone, and we'll see the ticket has been purchased. And that is where we're at. I was at Stanton Hall on the grounds with several volunteers this weekend, just because we saw a lot of folks in town, and we did have a lot of people walk up, and we were gracious and hospitable like Natchez people, love to be. And the tourists were questioning, a little confused perhaps. I believe that when they felt that they could come and stay in a hotel or a bed and breakfast, a lot of the visitors just assumed that our attractions would be open as well. And of course, the tour houses I consider as some of Natchez attractions, and they were not open. But I think the visitors did enjoy themselves. I think the bottom line is just what we're doing, communication. Information is power, and we've just got to get it out there as many ways as we can so that our visitors don't feel irritation or confusion as to what's available to them. And again, I will just reiterate that the tour homes are ready. We're ready to open. We're waiting for the governor and Mr. Mayor and all of the task force to allow us to reopen.
So thank you, Eugenie. And we'll have a follow-up meeting because, things are changing daily. Is the plan right now still to have sort of a trial run on June 20th and then be fully open on the 28th?
And let me
question.
hold up. Let me explain to the task force when we talk about a trial run. We're not talking about tourists coming in. We're talking about using a few local people to do a mock tour to make sure that all of the guidelines, the methodology, and the protocols are in place. So I just want the task force and members on this call to understand that. Go ahead.
Eugenie, go ahead. I'm sorry. Hello?
I'm here.
Okay, Eugenie, are you still with us? You might
Well,
be
that's
muted.
a good plan. A dry run. I'm not muted.
Oh, okay. So I think one thing that we need to continue talking about, the bringing the groups of 4 to 6 tourists through the house is very manageable. The concern was what happens when the boats come and you've got the group of 25 or more. So that was really.
We don't have, sadly, Chesney, we don't have that worry. The boats, I don't see any boats coming until late July. I mean, everybody's postponed. Jennifer can speak to it perhaps, but we have one boat and they're going to at very low capacity on the ship, and the ship has protocols, and then they're going to divide the people among their 4 buses. So you're looking at about 10 people in the bus, 6 or 10 people in the buses.
Okay.
And that's only one visit, and they don't go everywhere. They actually, they have a couple of premium tours that they take. One's to Frogmore, one's to Longwood, and they can walk around town. So I don't see, and bus groups, we have lost all the bus groups, through summer. I mean, the first one is September the 25th, as far as an out of town.
Okay. Boat is one still coming? Okay. All right. Well, this group has been tremendously responsive and responsible. So thank you, and we'll just keep the conversation going, and hopefully sooner than later.
Okay.
Thank you. Lance Harris, Grand Village.
Hello, good morning, everybody. I'll just say at the Grand Village a couple of highlights and key points. We will be opening the grounds on a limited basis starting June the 1st. So next Monday, we'll be open on Mondays, Wednesdays, and Fridays from 10 a.m. to 2 p.m. Again, that's just on the grounds. We will be doing a lot of the same protocols that everybody else is doing as far as keeping updated cleaning and putting out appropriate signage related to social distancing practices and that sort of thing. And we'll be preparing to reopen the building starting July 1st. I anticipate that when we reopen July 1st, we'll have some slight changes to what our regular hours have been. In the past, we've been open 7 days a week. I think we'll be going on a Tuesday through Saturday schedule from 9 a.m. to 4 p.m. again starting July 1st. But that'll be kind of some new hours for the Grand Village. One of the things I'm excited about, though, for the Grand Village is that we've really changed a lot of our programmatic opportunities and moved them into an online capacity. So if anybody's on Facebook, you can see some of the series that we've had going on, discussing a variety of different topics related to the Grand Village and the Natchez people. And then I think within the next month, we're going to be unleashing a new virtual reality exhibit for the site, where you can view the site as you see it in 2020, but also from the vantage point of 1730 as well, too. So keep your eyes open for that information coming out soon. And that's kind of where we're at on it.
Thank you, Lance. I can't wait to see the VR or experience the VR exhibit. Thank you.
Thank you.
Next on the list is the Natchez Mall, and just a quick report. We've had a series of.
What about NAPAC?
Oh, I'm so
Francis
sorry.
Wallace?
Francis is not on the call, and I just jumped over that by mistake. NAPAC is in a wait and see mode. They have no plans to reopen, immediately. So that to be continued as we see more of where we're headed with this virus. Okay, and then the Natchez Mall, the mall owners.
But let me also say on NAPAC, based on our meeting last week, and Francis was on the call with the tour museum meeting. All of the other museums have agreed to help NAPAC to put the guidelines in place and to help them so that they can also proceed in terms of opening once they get everything in place. So all of the other groups agreed to help and assist in that in the NAPAC group. Thank you, Chesney. Go ahead.
Thank you.
Excuse me,
right, so,
excuse me, Mayor and Chesney. Excuse me. Could I have a contact number, because I did try to reach out, and I don't have Francis's.
Eugenie, you're fading in and out, but I'm here that you asked for
that,
yeah. All right.
They,
yes.
They haven't answered.
Okay. Chesney, what she's asking for is contact information for the NAPAC.
Okay.
Okay. We'll get that to her.
All right. Thanks, Eugenie. So just briefly, the owners of the mall are based in Texas, and then their management team is scattered in Florida and I think Virginia. But we've been discussing with them the possibility of a drive-in, drive-in movies at the mall. And we have another call scheduled for Friday of this week. And we need to be looking into what kind of permits they would need on our end, but they're excited about it and think that this might be a model for their other properties as well. So we'll report more on that later. Tony Heidelberg, are you on the call?
Yes, I am.
Would you please give us an update on how it's going with the casino, and also how it came to be that the casino is allowed to reopen?
Okay, briefly, first of all, thank you all for having us on this call. As it relates to the casino opening, we're governed by the Mississippi Gaming Commission, and roughly about 10, 12 days ago, the order was given that we could reopen this, which would have been this past Thursday, 21st, 8 o'clock a.m. They gave us some guidelines to reopen. We took those guidelines and created our own guidelines, which are about 30 additional items that we were required to do. Things like when the customer comes up, you have to ask them a series of 5 questions. But before you ask those questions, you have to take their temperature. And if they're at 99.9 or above, they are not allowed to enter. Or if it appears that they were walking and maybe gotten a little hot, they have a 15-minute cool-off period before they're tested again. Following that, they have 5 questions. They go through things like, have you been in contact with anyone with COVID-19, any shortness of breath, sore throats, fever in the last 40 hours, loss of smell or taste, diarrhea within the last 24 hours. After they've gone through that process and they look visually okay, then they are allowed to sanitize. The same thing happens with our employees, and they come through another door to enter the property. Once inside, we've taken all of the gaming devices and we've had them placed 6 feet apart, those that are operational. We only have enough chairs to accommodate, I think, 220 people within the facility. Our capacity is around close to 600. Our mandate is to operate at 50% or less. We've ensured that we would definitely be less than 50%. Over the course, since Thursday, over the course of the weekend, we possibly operated around 25 at peak time, maybe 30% throughout the course of the weekend. So it's a slow move, which is not necessarily great for the casino industry, but it is definitely good for us with our social distancing. And we're cognizant of the fact that we need to do our part in making sure that the city is safe and the residents are safe as well. So we're going to continue that process all the way out to the 31st, unless there's some other movement. There's a strong likelihood, and let me back up real quickly. We're only open from 8 o'clock a.m. until 2 o'clock a.m. the following day. From 2 o'clock a.m. until 8 o'clock a.m., we sanitize the entire casino. During the course of the day, we sanitize on a 30-minute basis. We have sanitation stations all throughout the facility. Before a person can sit down at a gaming device or a table, we'll sanitize it first, and they've got to also hand sanitize. When they get up, it's sanitized again, and before someone else sits down, it's re-sanitized. With our table games and things of that nature, we have everyone distanced off. We have our protocols with that. We have plexiglass throughout the facility, especially around the bar area, to make sure that there's no shouting interaction between folks. As far as that is concerned, our sports betting has been suspended. We'll probably have it suspended through June and possibly July. Naturally, there are no sporting events happening, so there's no need to have that going on or to have people walking through with that. Now, let me pivot real quickly to the hotel. We do not expect to open the hotel until possibly the latter part of June for two reasons. Number one, make sure we're keeping up with the social distancing guidelines. Number two, it's just not sound business practice when you only have 5 or 6 rooms being rented at any given time. So that's what we're going to do. But I will say that we are in discussions with a filming operation that may come to Natchez, that whereby they're requesting a little bit over 100 rooms. And that would be for 3.5 months. And we've got to look at that. And before we pull the plug on that, we will invite the task force in on some of that conversation. But there's a major movie that we're being considered for that will move from LA to Natchez and help us out a little bit here. And if we can get it to happen, it'll go from probably July, August, September, October. And we've got to look at some additional guidelines for on-site filming and things of that nature. But that's something to talk about once that is agreed upon. Outside of that, you're probably looking at about July-ish before we open up. We have a lot of requests now for groups to come in. We just don't think that it's timely enough for the city to be able to accommodate all the groups who are asking to come in through our services. So I'm prepared for any questions you may have.
All right. Thank you, Tony. Chesney, let's proceed.
Okay, thanks. Chandler Russ, give us an update, please, on the Economic Recovery Task Force.
Sorry, I forgot my microphone was muted again. Yeah, from my the task force, as you know, has currently has three subcommittees, and in government, the government subcommittee, its main focus right now, we delivered last week a resource piece to all the entities, the cities, cities and the parish and the county, just outlining those resources that are available to government because of COVID-19 and opportunities that may exist. It's a living document, meaning it's going to be updated throughout the lifespan of the pandemic as the resources continue to develop and change over time, and guidelines and things continue to be written. So, but we did get that to the government group last week, as well as had a significant discussion regarding incentives for remote workers with that group, and it was determined that we'll try to develop a incentive model, kind of in a, I would say, a draft proposal back to that group within the next few weeks, trying to determine how to incent remote workers to the Natchez Vidalia area, and trying to figure out how to do that. So, there's examples all over the country where you've got communities that are using incentives to do that. As you know, the state doesn't allow any incentives along those lines, so it falls on the local governing bodies to try to develop incentives to try to recruit these workers into our area versus other areas. And we feel like that's a good place to start as in the government group, as it is. We feel like from a marketing standpoint, we're not going to have too big of an issue kind of getting our message in front of remote workers. It's a matter of how do we get remote workers how do we separate from the various other communities that are providing incentives and things along those lines. So that's kind of the work in the government group. In the small business group, probably the main thing that's there now, and is Debbie on the call?
Debbie is not.
No.
Okay. All right. Well, okay. So on the small business group, the subcommittee there, the main thing is that the survey's still open. We're closing in on about 100 surveys so far. I think we have like 88 at the last count, which was this morning, and our goal is to get above 100 surveys, so we have a good representation of all of the business community at large. And so we're going to keep pushing those, and hopefully we can close that survey towards the end of this week, in order to have a good pool of respondents for that. But the goal from there is to take the survey results and then develop some action plans based off of the survey results for that small business group. And the data that's come in so far is pretty interesting on what their needs are and what's out there, and kind of how it breaks down into different sectors. And the needs of a restaurant are much different than the needs of maybe a retail shop, but it's kind of all over the board. And so we look forward to pulling that information together and sharing it when we have a good summary of information and a good sample of the region. The media, our media group, which is the third subcommittee of the task force, we're starting. We've had our for the last few weeks, really, we've had our big put your money where your home is campaign, and so we're still continuing that, but kind of switching some of the messaging out some, in order to begin to demonstrate a place that is taking the diligence and done remained focused on safety, and trying to really hammer tried to get the consumer back with some confidence into some of the business community at large. And so that's kind of, you'll see a small shift in some of the messaging over the next few weeks in that, but with the same basic theme, but just a little bit of shift in the messaging and the marketing or the targeting of that. Additionally, our Shop Smart campaign that's is kind of being managed by that group also. There's 50 plus businesses that have signed up and done their basically completed their forms, and also which makes it a 70 plus locations that for instance, I think Pat's on the call. They're one. They've got multiple locations throughout their system, and so it's over 70 locations now that are considered Shop Smart. We give them basically a printed I guess poster or sign that's for they either hang up in their door or to put in a frame on their countertop or somewhere to basically to display it. It was deemed that they want a decal of some sort, like a sticker, and so we're getting some pricing on some decals that won't maybe fade as easily with the sunlight and windows and things like that. So they're doing that, so we should have those available probably towards the end of this week as well. Finally, as y'all are aware, the governor did sign Senate Bill 2772, which is $300 million in business relief, $60 million dedicated to companies that automatically receive $2,000, and they basically it's 50 people or less in that operation, and they've had to file taxes for 18 and 19 is the basic general summary. There's some more details there of what you qualify and when you'll get a check. Additionally, the $240 million is set aside in MDA, and those will be grants ranging from $1,500 up to $25,000. And of that $240 million, $40 million is dedicated to minority businesses. And then also the first 21 days, once the application's open, we'll have those that did not receive PPP will have priority in that 21-day cycle. And so
I think Chandler really great if on that grant that's coming through the state, if you would just draw something up so that we can get it disseminated to all of the quote unquote small businesses throughout our community. And I think UC will serve as a resource to help in terms of assisting individuals out there who might need some help. If you could get that drawn up so that everybody who's on this call, we can get it disseminated to small businesses. I think that would be wonderful. And I really appreciate you giving the task force an update.
Right, and that'll be no problem. I think on last Thursday, Mayor, and I know everybody's email right now is ridiculous with being hammered, but I know we sent out a summary of that program this past Thursday in your email. So it should be.
Thank you.
And look, I know everybody's email is crazy. Mine's a mess right now, but. But I want to.
Thank you so much.
We'll resend it. With no problem. We'll get that out.
Okay. Thank you so much.
And then finally, I think that's it. Jennifer, I know Jennifer and Pat are on the call. Did I cover all the topics that we covered in the big task force and our big group? What else did I leave out?
There was one other
item. I think you hit all the major points.
Okay.
Yeah. Okay. We need to go head on to schools at this time. Go ahead, Mr. Frazier.
I have a question for Mr. What's your name? But anyway, this is my question. I've been sitting here listening to you. You hitting on all the high spots and everything that needs to be hit up. But I just want to ask you two questions. As you know, the small business people been struggling and stuff. And the other part is what your organization is doing to help the minority business in this county and throughout this area and the rest of small business. What have you putting forward to doing? Or what are your future plans?
Yeah. Two things is small business community at large, whether it's minority based or non-minority based, is struggling mightily. I mean, it is it's not a pretty picture out there right now, and quite frankly, our office right now, Billy Joe, has been to is definitely to try to disseminate as much information that's out there to that. For instance, we on the PPP loans or grants that were out there, we probably talked to, advised, helped, well over 200 applicants, and those were, many of those were minority.
Let me say this. Let me chime in here. With this state money that has been allocated for businesses, we just can't put pressure on one agency. We've got to get all of these agencies to assist our small businesses and our minority businesses in terms of getting this money to recover from this pandemic. We've got Southwest Planning and Development District down there. Part of their job is to help, to assist our small businesses throughout this community. Natchez Inc. to help our small businesses and our minority businesses. The Chamber of Commerce needs to assist. And Natchez Business Civic League. We've got these agencies that need to board and to assist small businesses and our minority businesses throughout this entire community. So, we've got to make sure that we hold them accountable and to help our small businesses to recover from this pandemic, because there's a pot of money that has been allocated by the state, and we've got to make sure that Natchez Adams County gets its share to help our small businesses to recover. Thank you, Chandler, and thank you, Alderman Frazier, for presenting that question. But we've got to make sure the Southwest Development District, that they get on board and they assist to help our minority and small businesses throughout this community with this money that is aside.
Yeah. Billy Joe,
we've got to wrap this up. Go ahead, Chandler.
Yeah, Billy Joe, if you have one of your constituents, if there is a minority-owned business that you believe is struggling, that hasn't talked to us, please give them my number or email, and we will do whatever it takes to try to get them the assistance that they need. I can tell you that. So if you've got somebody, please send them to us, and we'll try our very best to make sure that they're taking advantage of whatever resources.
I appreciate that challenge, but I can, like I say, I don't want to, time is running short, but I'm just going to put it to you in frank terms. The whole community and small businesses, mom and pop business, and the minority community in Natchez is suffering. And I've been talking to people, they feel that they can't get through to get the money that they want. So I guess it must be a disinformation. There's enough information that we're not getting out. Thank you.
Well, I don't think the state of Mississippi on this allegation, since the governor signed the legislation, has they put the information out there yet in terms of application, Chandler?
No, the MDA has not released an application yet. So we're literally
okay.
talking
But
now.
we've got to be
Mayor,
on top of it here in Natchez Adams County. And we've got to get South Development District on board to assist our minority businesses and our small businesses community, the Chamber of Commerce, Natchez Business Civic League. All agencies need to help. Alderwoman Mathis, go ahead.
yes, Mr. Mayor, I agree 100%. On my radio program, I've been putting out about the ability to get not unemployment monies. I put that out. I put the web page out. Senator Witherspoon was on last week. Representative Robert Johnson has been on trying to getting information out prior to the passage of the bill. Senator Witherspoon came on and gave everything about the bill, waiting on the governor to sign. He did sign it Friday. I did send out on my own phone the businesses, especially barbershops, beauty shops. Those are the main small business, some restaurants, anybody who had contacted me, and I try to give all that information out every Tuesday. So it is going to be, but I agree with you. Everybody needs to get together so we know where to send people, because I hadn't thought about Southwest Planning, and I just need to know whenever they sign up and say they'll be ready to assist. I knew about the Chamber, and I knew about Natchez Business and Civic League, and I knew about Natchez Inc. But we got to help these people because they don't know where to go, and they got to have some assistance in filling out this information. So I didn't jump in there immediately because I was already addressing them, especially on my radio program that I'm paying for. So I'll get as much information from you all as to where to go so I can put it back out tonight, because I'll be on tonight. So I want to put it out where to go, and I just need to know. And I'll get with you, Chairman, and get the number. Thank you.
All right.
Thank you, Alderwoman Mathis. All right, we need to go ahead on to get updates from the various schools. The school board with Mr. Butcher. Mr. Butcher is not on the call. And as I told you earlier, during this force meeting, Mr. Butcher is opening up several administrative offices in the system. So he had Dr. Stubbs to talk to administrators and staff about antibody testing. And I was there to inform the staff members on the guidelines and the procedures, methodologies of protecting themselves and the public. So it went over very well. Private schools, parochial schools, Norm Yvonne and David King, are you on the call?
Yeah, this is Norm Yvonne. I'm here. Can you hear me?
Yes, sir. Go ahead.
All right. We brought back our year-round employees, some starting today, and then the rest on July 1st, with the protocols in place so that we're keeping social distancing. We've got wearing masks. We've got hand sanitizer stations squared away. Our maintenance staff is doing their regular summer work right now, again, maintaining that social distance and wearing masks. We've purchased 3 electrostatic disinfecting ionized spray machines that we'll begin to use as soon as they arrive. We expect them in July before school is expected to start, so we will do a thorough disinfecting of every classroom and every surface every day. And then the diocese is forming a task force to make the same considerations that our public school board is making, to look at what our start of the school year may look like in August, obviously depending upon whatever happens with our restrictions and regulations, so that we're ready for just about every contingency.
Okay. Thank you, Norm Yvonne. Any questions for Mr. Vaughn? Are there any questions? If not, I know Mr. King with ACC is not on the call. We're going to move on with Senior Citizen Center, Sabrina Barty.
Good morning, Mayor and everyone. The Senior Center is, we're still waiting on directives from the State Department of Health as to when we can begin to provide services at the facility. At this point, we are still doing those services that we can take to the homes, but we are still not doing anything at the senior center. That is my report. Thank you.
Thank you, Sabrina. Moving on to recreation parks, golf, tennis. Faye.
Yes, good morning, everyone. Right now, we're in the process of reopening our golf and our tennis courts. We have plexiglass in place in both golf and tennis areas. We also got guidelines that were sent down by the state on how to reopen. So we are working on those guidelines. Greg is pretty much has all his in place. We are still working on tennis at this time and trying to get everything sanitized and cleaned up back into the park areas and everything. So I'm hoping by the end of the month we'll probably be in place with all sanitizing and everything getting ready to reopen.
Okay, thank you, Faye. Are there any questions for Faye Minor? Okay, if not, I would like to thank everyone for being on the call this morning. Thank you for all of your hard work and your dedication to our entire community. I want to send out a special thank you to William Thames, who took charge of the task force to help facilitate and to provide very critical information for all of the work that he's done. He's done an excellent job, and I totally understood when he decided that he wanted to step down in terms of being the co-chair of the task force, because it is overwhelming. There's a lot of work, and a lot of people don't realize that the work. And William has worked very hard. And as mayor of the city, I want to say thank you, William, on behalf of the Board of Aldermen and the citizens of Natchez. And of course, Dr. England is continuing to be the chair of the task force. And of course, as we know, he's busy as a physician, and it's very challenging for him to preside over these meetings. So we are being creative, and we are reorganizing the task force so that we can continue to be proactive and protect our citizens of this entire community. We are moving into a new normal. Our circadian rhythms, that is, our biological clocks, are changing because of this pandemic. Our lives are changing. You know, we are becoming maskers, we're becoming sanitizers now, and we have to adapt and conform in order to prevent a major second wave from impacting our community. And you know, it's not our intent to be hard on businesses and the community and on churches. We're just trying to save lives. We're trying to reduce the spread of this disease. And as all of you know on this call, that the city of Natchez, the county of Adams, we cannot relax guidelines weaker than the governor's. For example, you know, some of the bars and nightclubs were complaining that the casinos are open, but yet they have to close at 10 o'clock. That's not a city order. That's not a county order. That's a state order from the governor. And we cannot relax anything weaker than the governor's orders in our community. We're continuing to make sure that we do what we need to do in order to protect our citizens. The yard signs that we currently have out there that say stay home, COVID-19 kills, are going to be taken up. We will start taking those up today, and we're relaxing the yard signs to start a new campaign that says simply stay safe. So, you know, we are relaxing a little bit in the city in terms of messaging. We want the message to still be that people be safe, that they need to follow the guidelines. So we will start taking up the stay home yard signs today and moving to a new campaign. So with that, are there any questions for any of the topics that we dealt with here today while we have everyone on the call?
Mayor,
questions?
Mayor, this is Chandler, and it might be, I might have missed it, but so I think the only, I think maybe a point of confusion, especially in the maybe in the business community at large, is where, is there a document that that the task force maybe has put out that shows the difference between the governor's orders and what the city has in place also to date? Meaning, so I know the city's adopted, you know, most or parts of the governor's orders, but they didn't adopt all of them. You know, I mean, I know all that, but as far as a clarification on what is maybe different from the governor's orders, or as what is in addition to the governor's orders, I think that would be something that would be extremely helpful and clarify for everybody. Chesney, is there anything out there that's
well, it's all posted on the city's website, but what we can do is we can create a document that will compare the two to tell you what the governor has in place and what it is that the city has in place and what the differences are. Chesney?
Yes, that there's a summary document that has everything on it on the city's website, but we can do like a quick one sheet, Chandler, and you and I can work on that together with Bob Latham. The city has adopted pretty much everything that the governor has except the parks. And then the two things that the city has in place that are more restrictive, one is the curfew and the other is the mandatory mask requirement.
Right. And so that's what, and so some of that.
For example, like the restaurants and bars to close at 10 o'clock, that's a part of this order. That's not a city thing. That's the governor's order. And we cannot relax lighter than the governor's orders, as you know, Chandler.
Right. So, okay. I was just, if it's out there already, Chesney, then, you know, there's no need to do it. I'll find it.
You're right, Chandler. There's a lot of confusion. I see it on Facebook, people saying the mayor needs to lift the curfew and the mayor needs to close the casino. And, you know, this is crazy. The mayor can't do either of those things. And there's misunderstanding about the 10 o'clock p.m. shutdown for restaurants and bars. That's a governor's order. So the mayor and the board of aldermen cannot cannot say, oh, we're going to let bars and restaurants stay open all night because the governor has ordered the 10 p.m. shutdown. It's the governor who says bars that don't serve food can't be open at all. It's the governor's order that says no live music. So there's a lot of confusion, a lot of frustration. And I think this one sheet you're talking about could be very helpful.
Okay.
And we will start on that today, Chandler. Thank you for bringing that up. Are there other comments or questions out there?
Mr. Mayor, this is Sarah Smith.
Go ahead, Alderwoman Smith.
Yeah, I was curious. I heard something about the task force is doing a walkthrough for the homes. Is that the only business that's having walkthroughs? I just didn't know who decided to walk through and what's the purpose in it. Do they have industry guidelines?
Yeah, well, that was something that when I was on the call with him last week that I suggested so that everybody can feel comfortable that they have good guidelines in place and that people follow through. Chesney, you want to talk a little bit about it?
Yes, that came out of the Historic Home Museum's meeting. And, you know, the guidelines that this group has come up with for themselves are really, really stellar and impressive. The concern came about when we do get the boats, and I'm responding because Eugenie has dropped off the call, but when we do start to get the big motor coaches or the boats, and a group of, say 25, 30 people, what do we do then? And so they talked about having an outside tour and an inside tour, which would automatically cut, the number of people in the house in half. And also we talked about doing a trial run, a practice run through, one or two houses just to see how it would actually work to manage a crowd that size going through a private home.
Well, it seems like that would be something the individual home would have to do because they're all set up differently. I don't know. It just feels like it's singled out a little bit on that one industry.
Well, I think that was just strictly from for like, the homes that are owned by Pilgrimage Garden and Natchez Garden, for example, like Stanton Hall. Yeah.
That came from the clubs. That was an idea that was had, in the context of that meeting. It's not something that's being requested by the task force or imposed on them. It was a good meeting.
And just lastly, and just because like y'all were talking about the confusion with orders and all, there's confusion on what the task force is doing versus the city and who. Like I'm on the task force, but I'm not privy to a lot of the things that are being done going in with specific businesses. So the Board of Aldermen isn't all privy to everything that's going on with that. So I just want to clarify that because there's confusion on that as well. What is the city? Is it the city's task force? It's the mayor's task force? It just seems like there's getting to be a lot of confusion in the public and some frustration as well on that.
It's the City of Natchez Task Force. Okay.
Mr. Mayor,
Are there any other?
Yeah, I just, for my own understanding and trying to use the correct words, the city's curfew, as I understood it, only applies to people under the age of 21. Am I correct?
Hello?
Hello?
Okay, I'm sorry. Someone was trying to call in and knock my system off. Go ahead.
Can anyone hear me out there? So
I can.
Okay. My question was simply the curfew, as I understand it, the city's curfew doesn't apply to businesses. What it applies to is people under the age of 21, correct? Well, I think I'm not getting through, so it may be something with my.
I hear you, Alderman Dill. Everybody hears you.
Yeah, I can hear you, Dan. Repeat your question again.
Referring to the city's curfew, that only, in my mind, only applies to people under the age of 21. That they have to be off the streets by 11 o'clock. It doesn't apply to businesses. It doesn't apply to the casino. It doesn't apply to people over 21. It's really just to get people under the age of 21 off the streets by 11. Am I correct?
I don't think you are. Is the city attorney on the call, Attorney Latham?
I'm on the call.
You explain the curfew, please?
Well, I mean, I think Dan, if I understood what Dan said, I think that's correct. That curfew was put in place so that it would keep people under the age of 21 off the street between 11 and 5. It would allow, but I will say this: it keeps everybody off the street that's either not working at a business that's authorized to be open or patronizing a business that's authorized to be open after 11 o'clock. So that may be the distinction that you're looking for, Mayor.
That's correct.
Does that clarify it, Dan?
Well, if you have a business that's open after 11 o'clock, let's say, for example, the casino, and someone is over 21 years of age, are you telling me they can't patronize that business?
No, what I said was anybody over the age of 21 years is allowed to go to work and or patronize a business that's authorized to be open after 11 o'clock at night.
I got you.
Yeah, all employees can go work and all patrons can go to these particular businesses and patronize them.
That are authorized to opening under the governor's executive orders. Correct. Thank you.
Right. Yes.
Okay, are there any others? If not,
Just further clarity for Alderman Dillard. Of course, when you speak of the businesses, the bars will not be allowed to be open past the 10 o'clock hour according to the governor's order. So those businesses that can stay open past 11 o'clock hours would perhaps be the gas stations and, of course, the casinos, but I'm not really sure what else would fall within that category.
Well, that's the point I was looking for, and I think the attorney worded it correctly, is that for those businesses that are authorized to be open after 11 o'clock, which we know the governor's executive order clearly points out restaurants and bars to operate no later than 10 a.m. The distinction to me is to get it to the public.
10 p.m.
10 p.m. That this is not a city-imposed curfew. Our curfew really only applies, in my mind, is under the age of 21. But I think we're in agreement. Thank you.
Well, I will point out that restaurants that do not serve alcohol can stay open 24 hours. So that is the change. That was a recent executive order of the governor. And that would apply to restaurants like Waffle House or House of Pancakes, those type of restaurants.
Correct. They are authorized to be open, which is the key distinction in there, that those that can. It's just patrons have to be over 21 to patronize these businesses. Thank you.
Right.
And I think, Mr. Mayor, that's where a lot of the confusion is coming in. So if we can get that one pager or something that actually specifies who can be open via the governor, who can't be open via the governor, that'll help. I understand what you're saying. I understand the curfew. Tried to make sure everybody that I answered via what we sent out, for what we adopted. So we just got to make sure that people understand and that we can explain it when they contact us, and we can explain it via what the amendment was and what the governor said. It's hard. It's very difficult to keep up with all of the amendments and every word, and people are frustrated because their businesses are not being allowed to open. And I'm just giving that's a FYI. I'm not arguing about it. Of course, I have to be in support of what the governor has put out. But I'm just saying we need something to clarify to the people, something very simple. Why this bar can't be open? Why Waffle House can be open? Why the casino is open? Just those two things, and then maybe they'll understand better. Thank you.
That's a very good point, Alderwoman Mathis and Alderman Dillard. And we will work on that, try to get that ready for today, so that you can have that one pager and everybody will have it, because it does get difficult and get entangled, because as we all know, this thing changes like every day and every week. The governor's orders change, and the county and the city. So we'll put it on one pager so that we can have, and we will have to keep it updated every week so that as things change, we all can know. Thank you so much. If there's nothing else.
Mr. Mayor.
Yes, Ms. Mayor.
Will we get that one pager before the meeting today at 6 o'clock? Will we get that one page delivered?
I can't guarantee that, Alderwoman Irving, because I depend on volunteers to help me with this. And of course, it has to be reviewed by the city attorney once the volunteers do it. So, I will try to work as expeditiously as possible, but we'll try to do what we can. I can't promise you that. Okay.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
So, thank you. If there's nothing else, I'm going to ask Sabrina Bartley, if you don't mind, will give us a closing prayer, and we will end the call with that prayer. Sabrina. I guess, Sabrina, we might have lost her somewhere along the way. So let us pray. Father, we come at this time, we give you thanks. And Father, we ask that you continue to bless our city and guide us and help to make us stronger and help us to recover from this pandemic physically and mentally and economically. And Father, I ask that you bind us together as fellow citizens. And Father, I'm so thankful for all that you do for not just me, but for all of our people. Thank you for everything. In your lovely son, Jesus' name, we pray. Amen. Amen. And God bless you all. Take care.
Mayor, the board have to adjourn.
I don't think he heard you, Ben.
Okay.
Mayor Pro Tem, would you adjourn us?
Do I need to get the mayor back on, guys?
Mayor Pro Tem can adjourn us.
Well, okay, I call for a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Okay, moved by Sarah, and I guess second by Ben. I don't even know if what's the name is on it. Is Survey on the phone?
Yes, I'm here.
Okay, call the roll, please.
Yes, ma'am.
Thank you.
Alderwoman Mathis?
Aye. I can't vote. I'm older than me. Go on.
Okay, Alderman Frazier?
Aye.
Alderwoman Smith?
Aye.
Alderwoman Irvin? Alderwoman Irvin? Alderman Davis?
Aye.
Alderman Dillard?
Aye.
All present except Alderwoman Irvin, Madam Mathis.
Okay, and it's unanimous, and we have one absence on it because I don't think she needs to stay home. So please let the mayor know that it was suggested that the mayor pro tem ask for the motion to adjourn. Thank you.
Make a note. Okay. Thank you. Bye-bye.
I'm sorry, I did not adjourn the meeting.
We did. We went on. I was asked to go on and ask for an adjournment, Mayor, by Alderwoman Smith, and we went on and did that, took a vote.
Okay, thank you, Alderwoman.
Okay, y'all welcome. You're welcome, Mayor.